Hello, Rachel.
Hi, Ryan.
How are you going?
Pretty good. How are you?
Ooh, I'm unsure. I don't know what's happening. I have no clue. I know as much as you do. Soldiers, Marines, I know only what you know.
I know more than you.
So do you respect me enough to give me more information?
I do.
What was that?
I do.
Oh!
Our mission is to discuss space above and beyond from the Yum Yum perspective.
The concept of space that's above and beyond us?
The TV show called Space Above and Beyond.
There's a TV show called Space Above and Beyond? What's that about?
There was. It was short-lived.
No! What was this, a Fox show?
Yeah! How did you know?
How I don't miss them. Fox. Honestly, they're one of the ones where it's like, oh, guys, it's bad when companies get destroyed by...
You got ate by Disney.
I mean, that's not good, but Fox sucked. But yeah, Space Above and Beyond is a science fiction television series that we are watching through, and we welcome all of you to watch along with us and listen to us break down the episodes one at a time. Rachel, this is your first time experience, and for me, this is a revisit. So there's a lot of ground to cover. We are called Yum Yum because of Star Trek Discovery, a series that we have talked about extensively on this podcast before.
Can we make that ultra compartmentalized?
Maybe. I'll have to discuss it with the other 4 people in the world that know the plan. So, Yum Yum. Great line, beautiful line, fantastic line. We cheer every time we have to say it, and we cheer every time that you people listen to us say it, and are reminded about how that happened. That was allowed. That was given time on screen. No, not clear motivations for whatever the antagonist was up to that season, but a woman saying, yum yum. Does it make sense? No. You're saying to me right now, Ryan, I've never watched Star Trek Discovery. I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, guess what? I watched Star Trek Discovery, and I still don't know what this moment was about. But hey, we're still trying to crack that code. Oh, talking about cracking codes, I have the DVD description for the episode that we are going to be discussing of Space Above and Beyond. We are 20 episodes in. So we have 3 left in general, like 3 left in total after this. So this one, episode 20, is called Stardust. And here is what is written down. A mysterious mission the 58th is assigned to carry out nearly turns to disaster when the Earth ship the core members ordered to escort suddenly locks onto their hammerheads and opens fire. What an interesting way to describe that. Now I may be biased. I don't know. Maybe I'm different of opinion to you, Rachel. But that description there goes over, gives us an understanding of a certain avenue the story could go down, when realistically that thing that happened in the story was very minor and inconsequential. And to me, I didn't even think of it as something that I would put that much dramatic emphasis on.
Nope,
not at all.
It is every pilot's right to know the condition of her craft. You kept that right from us. Without knowing the mission objectives, we could not assume that we were not being placed in danger. Sir, we are not asking to be told information that is not meant for us to know. We are not afraid of being placed in jeopardy, but we want to know when we're being placed in it.
So last episode, you guessed, I can't even remember, it was something along the line.
We are all made of stardust.
Oh, you thought stardust was going to be a resource, like a mineral that they were going to be...
Yeah, that was another idea.
And you were wrong.
I was wrong.
You were wrong. Apologize to Space Above and Beyond for being so wrong when they give you clear titles that will tell you what the episodes are about. Rachel, they can't see you giving a thumbs up, so please use your words on this podcast of the audio variety.
Thumbs up.
Oh, there you go. Glenn Morgan, James Wong, Rachel gave you a thumbs up on these titles. I do want to note one interesting thing. This episode was directed by a person that we know from Babylon 5, actually. Jesus. I have to get his name up again, but that's his first name. And he directed like Interludes and Examinations from Babylon 5 and Racing Mars, that great episode of Franklin and Marcus. So we know the direction, and I will praise the direction in this particular one. I thought it was very good, smooth, stylish, but not too bombastic in its visual presentations. So
It wasn't done with a flourish.
it wasn't done with too much of an aggressive flourish. So, Stardust, what are your thoughts on this, Rachel?
I didn't really like it that much. I thought that it was okay. I was like, this could have happened any time. And I'm not a huge fan of stuff when they go back to actually pushing the war forward.
Really? I'm more interested in that. Well, I understand what you're saying a bit. I mean, Rachel, it can't take place in any time. They mention the Green Meanies story, so it has to be after the Green Meanies. That very important subplot of R&R. See, you can't air this out of order because of that amazing continuity of the Green Meanies, which you cheered when she said that, because you cheered with, oh, is that over now? And the answer is seemingly yes.
Apparently.
But hey, since she mentioned it, it probably would not have been over.
Yeah, he's just already gone through detox.
Mm-hmm.
We've skipped forward enough for him to be back on board like usual.
So you were not a fan of this overall. You just didn't really vibe with this?
No, I don't tend to vibe with shows that at least I feel like are just using... You're going to bring up Voyager... And I want to say
I'm going to bring up X-Files too. I know exactly what you're going to say. Going to bring up Native American culture as some sci-fi mystical thing that we can exploit because it's foreign and weird to the writers and has that magical...
It's just like they're exploiting a culture for science fiction woo-woo.
Not woo-woo. But no, I understand. Oh, woo woo. No,
not oh.
No, they do bring it into war history, which is something I don't know if I should say the word commend, but it does show there was a deliberate reason for it rather than when X-Files or Voyager or other shows of this era use Native American culture for its own means, but it's still using it for its own means. I totally agree. And there's going to be a whole discussion about that.
Yeah, and I think I felt very uncomfortable with it in this episode.
Just to give a quick fire retort to that and then what I thought, I would be less uncomfortable with the episode if they didn't overtly and thuddingly play stereotypical Native American music whenever anything Native American was brought up. So it was one of those where it's like, okay, maybe dial that back a bit. Like every time, come on, guys. It did give me Chakotay flashbacks.
Yeah.
So my overall reaction to this was it was okay. It was better than the last two, but it was it wasn't as good as Dear Earth, and it wasn't good in comparison
to Pearly more than this. Sorry, I'll shut up and let you give your thoughts.
Yeah, I preferred this over Pearly. I found it was more structurally tight as an episode, tonally balanced, but you know this from having talked on the podcast many times over about different episodes of shows or different movies or whatever the case may be. You can look at something and go, this works. You know, it does all of the beats. There's these important character moments and scenes, and it does the tension and the tone and the themes well. Like, you can't argue that this isn't well made. While with Pearly, we did argue that. Well, here it's like you can't really argue that, but that doesn't mean that you like it more than ones that are less than this. Like how I talked about with R&R, which I thought was objectively a worse episode than Pearly, yet I liked that more. And yet that was more messy. The same could be applied with this, where it's like, this is better than those two episodes. It's structurally better. It went down easier, but I just look at it with a big shrug, like, okay. Like, thank you, we're touching upon Operation Roundhammer, we're pushing the needle forward a bit with all of that stuff. There was good character beats, the acting was fantastic from the guest stars and our main cast as usual. This isn't the low lows that we've had before, but it was just one where I look at the rating, it's like a 7-something, and I go, yeah. It's easy to say that this will not be one that we'll talk about when we're finished with the show and go, oh, remember Stardust? You remember that? In comparison to other ones like River of Stars, say, where it's like, oh, remember the fun Christmas episode? Like, how do you feel about just that sentiment in general, where you can have a piece of entertainment where, like, it checks off all the boxes of things, but you still don't give it like a glowing thumbs up.
I just kept on feeling like I didn't gel with it. It wasn't that the episode was doing things wrong, intentionally or unintentionally, structurally or emotionally. It just didn't click for me.
These are the difficult ones to discuss, because with, say, the ones that we always point to, like Mutiny or The Farthest Man from Home or R&R.
They have objective problems that we can see and discuss.
Yeah, and how they could better those things and how other episodes show that they could do these things better. This is just a simple case of it just didn't really work. Like, it's not that it didn't work, it just didn't really connect with either of us too strongly. You seem far less favorable to it than I am. Like, I preferred this over Pearly, honestly. Like,
yeah.
I would rather watch this than Pearly, but even then, I didn't think Pearly was an atrocious episode. It was just, it was a bit sloppy. Here, this was functional.
Yeah, I guess this episode had a problem that I always sort of have a difficulty with in shows, because it's just like, well, yeah, of course it's doing this, because that's what shows do. Each scene was there for a very specific purpose, and all of it felt very functional. So the scenes felt functional. They're getting from this point to this point, and they're showing these characters do this thing so that they can do this thing. And that's the way that I kept on experiencing the episode of, okay, and now they're going to do this, and now they're going to do that, and this scene is here for this reason. I never forgot that I was watching an episode of Space Above and Beyond.
It was not exhilarating, and it didn't take you for the ride. Even
the action, I was like, yeah, I didn't care about it as much because I knew that they had to lose, and I didn't really feel that any of them were conflicted about that, except maybe Vanson.
Well, the only interesting kink was the remote-controlled ship did get damaged, and Hawks, having now established a relationship with the person operating this, had to help her with what he could see, and that had to be then translated for her to understand. That was the most exciting part, and it only lasted like 15 seconds. If that was the majority of the episode, that actually would have been really fun. Like, think about that as a story, and how teamwork, even across space and communication. I'm salivating right now, but here's what we got. Oh, that's a neat little idea that lasted like 30 seconds.
Like when she's explaining, oh, the technology has been around for ages.
And I believe in it.
And it's just like, well, I don't give a shit about you. I do give a shit about Cooper and the rest of the 58th that you might kill. And they bring that up in the text a couple of times of like, maybe they don't want us to come back, or maybe they're planning on us not coming back, or do they care if we survive this mission?
I did grow to appreciate that character at the end of the conversation that she had with Cooper. I thought she brought up some magnificent points, things that I think about as well. So there is stuff to say, but this felt like homework rather than a joyous experience. Like when we watched The Angriest Angel, that was an experience. That was something where you almost realized, like you almost forgot that you were sitting down for 45 minutes because it goes by so quick and so beautifully. While here, this does feel like you are attending a work meeting and they go, okay, everyone sit down. This is what's going to be happening today. And you digest the information. It's very good. We're going to be moving forward. But this is what I always describe in these science fiction shows, especially with overarching plots. This is we're walking over to water the seeds a bit type episode. Like, this will most likely be important. Operation Roundham is this ongoing thing. But in itself, you aren't clapping and going, yeah, baby. This is just one where you go, this is necessary. This is an obligation narratively. So then the things that it will do later
it also
adds up.
Feels like a throwback to the start of the season where it's like, hey, we're nerds. We're history nerds. We're World War II history.
Yeah, just war nerds, military nerds, but they love World War II. They reference it a bunch.
They do. And
D-Day 2 was a line said, and I threw my hands up in the air and said, rename it, guys. That sounds corny. Corny, corny, corny. I love corn.
Oh, gosh. There was something else that I wanted.
This episode also lacked that grit that we have become more accustomed to in the last several episodes, even in R&R Pearly, and especially Dear Earth, that had some grit, even though there was some lighthearted silliness to it. Now, I know we're being a little bit harsh with it, but there were some good things. We get Ross in bed. And I did joke, if only the guitar was in the bed with him. But don't worry, the guitar did show up this episode. We got a history of the guitar. We got the name of the guitar brought back to us again. He had a whole little speech about if you fuck with his guitar, he's going to ruin your life.
Whoa. Son, I don't know if you'll understand what I'm about to say. This is Rosalind. You damage her, you damage me. And I will make you walk all 12.6 light years back to Fat Anthony's guitar parlor in Shreveport, Louisiana to repair a single nick.
We wouldn't want that now, because I'd have to make him walk all the way to Country Dick's Guitar Shop in Austin, Texas.
Everyone, sit down. Prepare yourself. I'm furious that this wasn't a Ross episode, because it really comes across like it's going to be. We spend like the first 10 minutes focusing on Ross and his conflicted attitude about what he has to go through, and his very sensible, mature, and lived-in relationship with this general, and how that draws him to one side, but his deep connection to the 58th and McQueen pulls him to the other side. I wish that they could just have done a Ross episode, just an unflinching. This episode's all following Ross. This is him having an arc instead of being the guy who looks like they're about to, but really he's going to pass it on to the rest. And I know he's the top dog in the chain here, but I really think that would have been beneficial to my entertainment. And I can't recollect if the last 3 episodes give him one, but I don't think they do. And that would be one of those things of, if this did get to have a second season, that would have been one of my notes as a fan. I would have written in something going, give Ross a full story of his own in one of these. The act is charismatic as hell. We always praise Tucker Smallwood. And this is one of those ones, again, where that did drag me away from loving it more, because they gave me something I love intensely, which was Ross for the first act of the episode. And then he just kind of peters in and out of it. What did you think about that stuff? Because like I said, we love Ross. We love the guitar. You were happy to see it.
Yeah, you were overjoyed when we cut to him, right? You were very excited to see him in bed.
Because we don't get to see him like that. Like, he's vulnerable. He's in bed. He's like, what's going on? And he's told something important, and then he gets all
Who's
serious.
at my door? Who's at my hatch? It is just kind of like, okay, this is functional. This message would go to the commander. Ross is the commander. Ross gets a message. We're intrigued. Go to credits.
But then it follows it up even more with the general comes on board, and they have a whole back and forth with each other. Do you think this is a series that could have given an episode following Ross, or do you think just from what you've consumed that would never, that would rarely, if ever, be in the cards for them, that they would be content keeping him where he's at?
I think without studio interference, they would have gotten there. I don't know if they would have gone there this season or next, but I think that they would have.
I'm a cynical man, and I'm not an X-Files expert. Like, I haven't watched X-Files in yonks, but they rarely, if ever, gave Skinner in X-Files an episode, like one where it's really him. Like, he was always similar to Ross, where he's important, he has a great dynamic with our leads, but he's the guy that helps necessitate what the lead characters do, and he's the authority figure. He has these moments, of course, and I love Skinner, but I do think that these guys being a part of that X-Files crew may have fallen into the same trappings, and it's one of those things where, at least with what we have got, it is a drawback, because honestly, a thing that, again, detracts from me is I didn't really care about anyone's perspective in this episode outside of Ross's. Like, I didn't really care about what Shane thought about things. I didn't really care what Cooper did or McQueen. And it wasn't like the script wasn't trying or the actors. It's just one of those things where I just go, okay.
It didn't click with you.
It was one of those things where everyone was given the little spiel about why this is important to them.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just
functional.
I've heard these characters' perspectives a lot already, and I kind of wanted a fresh one, because it's like, yeah, Cooper's going to say and react like that because that's what Cooper would do. And I guess, that's a part of the beast of we know these characters so well, where we just are so familiar with how they would react to things, that this felt very, just doing the motions of the thing.
Yep.
So what do you want to touch upon first in this?
The fact that they aren't told that they're on lockdown?
Mm-hmm.
Because that doesn't make sense to me. The fact that they're not, like, there is an announcement saying confined to quarters doesn't seem, I guess, realistic to me, because they're like, what's going on? We can't get out. The hatch door's locked. And then this other door's locked, but okay, so the hatch door did get opened for them to go out, even though they said that everybody was confined to quarters, and McQueen doesn't know what's going on. And to me, that felt really wrong, because even if they weren't telling people what was happening, they would give people their orders, and their orders were to stay in quarters. That's what Ross says before the credits, and they're doing, like, putting it on red alert or whatever
the credits
it is.
give before the lead-in gives you that sense, right? Like, everyone's going to be waking up going, oh, what's happening? Oh, we're confined to quarters. Why? And then everyone's like, why is that? But instead it really, and also since everybody's confined to quarters, it also comes across as like, is it only the 58th that are confined to quarters and now they're let out? Like, because we're so focused on the 58th.
Yeah. And it's like, well, nobody else is around, and they're investigating it. And it just doesn't feel right. To me, it feels like they've decided we're not going to go for the true sort of militaristic feel for this situation. We're going to go for the script writing approach, which is we need to create intrigue. The audience doesn't know why they're on lockdown, so we're going to make them not know that they're in lockdown in the first place, so that they're confused, like the audience is confused, but the audience still knows a little bit more than them. That's what it felt like to me.
Oh, yeah, this was definitely a script that was screaming intrigue over anything else. It didn't have that flair of something like Eyes, which was an episode that was all about mysteries and intrigue and conspiracies. And this was
felt
like
the function of the script.
We open up with intriguing and what's this leading to? Execution of a man. We get his last words, and then he's done, and then it's like, okay, what are we doing now? Where's this going to give?
How is this going to link up
with the rest of the plot? And then even that dead body, that guy's body, is this intriguing. Ooh, what are we going to do with this throughout the thing? And
they return to it. They're setting up that smoking gun, or the Chekhov's gun, whatever analogy I'm going for. I don't even.
I'd love to hear from the people who listen, because our viewing of TV is very specific at the moment, where we talk about modern Star Trek, say, and one of the things that we have grown very disdainful of and just tired is that intrigue, mysteries, ooh. And I wonder, has that, and just the obsession that modern TV has for that, poisoned us to appreciating this being a thing used, or is it just poorly executed for our tastes in this particular story?
I think it's not a thing that I often enjoy, because it usually feels to me like the show's going, you should feel interested, you should feel intrigued, and it's one of those specific things where it's just, I see the magic trick, not the magic.
We're not supposed to discuss it. You were the one who was analyzing all the rumors. And you were the one telling everyone to ignore the rumors.
Yeah, well, I think this goes beyond just rumors. What turned you around?
He told us the mission.
I still love that Hawks talks to McQueen like he's one of the crew, and then has to adjust. Like,
yeah, you tell us.
Yeah. I just really like that that's a continuing thing, because that's just the way that Cooper is, and McQueen begrudgingly sort of understands it, because he's like gotten to the point where Hawks will fuck up and then immediately try and smooth it over, and there's no point in trying to like train him out of it any more than they sort of already have, because he's just a loudmouth. He thinks before he talks a lot of the time. And I liked that relationship as well going in, because it's the difference in power between them, as well as the way that their relationship interacts with that power dynamic.
Yeah.
And that is really interesting to be reminded of going into the scene with Ross and McQueen.
Oh, with Ross and McQueen, yes.
Because it's very different. There's a friendship there that's long-standing, heartfelt, and full of trust. Yeah. But there is still a power differential. And the way that McQueen navigates that power differential is very different than the way that Hawks does very different situation in each case because of the people that they are. But I thought that would be a good thing to mention before.
Yeah, well, we could go to Ross and McQueen then, because a part of the relationship that McQueen and Ross have with each other to help motivate or even straighten out the other is intimidation in a weird way, or at least the I know things that you think I shouldn't know, or at least, hey, I have a gut feeling about this. I keep bringing up Eyes, but that was a wonderful episode that did that for Ross and McQueen. And here we have McQueen, when everything's said and done, he's like, hey, he's not upset that he doesn't know everything and that he's not being brought in, but he makes it clear to Ross of like, I have a feeling of what this is. I can do my own deduction. If I can deduce these things, other people can deduce these things that's happening around us right now. So don't underestimate the intelligence and the loyalty of us, because he walks up to him and he basically tells him about how he knows about how Native Americans were used in World War II and how they had this specific word, and it was this Navajo code that they would use because it was one of the few languages in the world that couldn't be decoded, or like only these people knew it. So it was a useful resource in a time where anything was like good with that, and so
anything that could be pillaged was.
And so he's needling Ross with this, and he does it in a very good way. I like how James Morrison plays it. Of course, he's always great in this role. Every scene he's in is the best scene of every episode, practically. And how he postulates, how he gives a theory about what is happening here with their mission. And how he says, I'll talk this through because, this is first time hearing all of this information too for you, but it's just like, he says that they are giving them something in a specific language code, but it's like, well, they need to be able to decode it because you're trying to trick them into thinking that this is serious, but you're doing it in a language that isn't the standard language that we use, so it isn't too obvious. But you need it in a language that they do know. So why would these aliens know Navajo? Like, why would they know that? Unless they're old alien gods, basically, is what he says, because that's what the Native American word for the code was.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that? Anything you want to talk about when it comes to what this colors in for the Chigs or humanity?
I've always had the theory that they're not actually properly aliens, that they're somehow linked back to Earth. So it kind of supports that, but I'm also like, I don't know if they know what this means yet.
Like they as in
the show.
The creators of the show? Yeah. Okay. I
don't know if they solidly know what they're going to get to do with it. I think they know what they want to do. They have an idea there of where they want to end up, but I don't think they know how they're going to get there.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you're teeing up things, but it's just like, are you really going to go for the Chigs are actually descendant from Native Americans?
Well, I think more that, at least this is the vibe I get from this exchange, and they don't play around with it too much, like that's it, and then we move on. But at least maybe because I'm tainted because we just watched Farscape and we've watched other media that does this, but it's like, is this one of those classic the aliens visited Earth at one point, were our godlike figures, and then went away, and now they still look at us as like we're their disciples that should obey them. That's a classic science fiction thing. Star Trek has done it.
Absolutely.
Babylon 5 does it. Farscape kind of plays with that in a different way, but and I guess I'm not a fan of it because I've just it feels like a given at this, like it feels like a given in science fiction. Like we need the big alien race to have already come to Earth and given us technology.
If they're that powerful, then surely they've come to Earth before.
This episode doesn't do this, but it's a classic. How could we have built the pyramids if it wasn't for aliens? We must have had aliens, and they must have done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When it's like, I always think the Red Dwarf answer for how we built the pyramids with whips, massive whips. That's the answer. It's like, thank you, Lister. But I don't know. I think it at least adds a little bit more flavor to the Chigs because you have said it. You've been having this growing sensation that there is a deeper connection between the Chigs and Earth, and it's because of these type of breadcrumbs that are sprinkled throughout the show.
Weirdly enough, like from the drop in the pilot, when they're like, "We're alone in the universe," I'm like, going to be like Red Dwarf and all of this seemingly alien life is actually dregs of humanity that have been left behind or mutilated or just been exposed to time.
Mutilated even. Wow. Yeah. But, you know, like, to me, that was one of the more perked me up moments of it just because, you know, unlike you, I am a little bit more interested in like the ongoing war and Chig stuff. I am personally interested in that. Like, I like that stuff in the show a bit more.
I don't think that it's bad, and there are lots of episodes where I really do enjoy that. But I care less because I know it's cancelled. I know that there's not a resolution to this war.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, well, maybe we'll get to see Roundhammer, maybe not. If it happens, it happens.
That's what West says. If it happens, it happens. And then that's that. Man, I liked his little journey in the episode where he was Mr. Let's not question things will work out, blah, blah, blah. And then later on, he's like, what do you think, guys? let's sit in a circle and talk about our little theories.
Him and Vanson perspectives swap,
which is a neat piece of business. Yeah, that's a neat piece of business. Now I want to talk about the General and Ross conversing because that's what really kicks things off. We have the General come in. He has this air of mystery to him. They're boarding the ship when everyone's locked in their quarters. They're skulking through the hallways. He's got a big thing that they're wheeling around. They reveal it's a body inside of it. Is it? Oh, it's the body from the beginning of the episode. Oh, what are they going to do with this guy? He's all cryogenically frozen, or at least he's on ice. And like I mentioned earlier, these guys are fucking around with Ross's guitar, and Ross has a go at them. And then this guy also chimes in with a go about guitars. Now he has his own guitar, and that they have to go to this place to fix up his guitar and all of that. And then it's like, oh, him and Ross are old buddies because, you know, obviously war buddies, you know, military buddies, but guitar friends is also a part of it. And you know, I don't know this actor who plays the General too well. I don't know him from many things. I don't know the actor's background in general, but I thought he did a marvelous job here. He makes what is a very stoic, stiff, and awkward type of character, which is the General, the one who is, I used to be your friend, but now I'm the authority here. That type of role can be very tricky to really pull off, but I think he gave it with absolute aplomb here. Like
I felt like they knew each other.
There was this look Ross gave him where I think he was looking at Ross, or maybe even grabbed him by the shoulder or something, and he tells him the general sentiment of like, this is all I can tell you. This is the objective. I can't tell you the reasonings for why these are the way they are,
I can tell
or the
you
outcomes.
like 2 things.
Yes, but the fact that I'm telling you shows you how much I care about you and how much I believe in you, and just the look that Tucker Smallwood has on his face, all of these mixtures of emotions that are just like going through the character is really prevalent in the scene. And
the journey to acceptance.
Yeah, and I'm a sucker too for we gotta make some noise while we have a private conversation because this room could be bugged. Anyone could be listening.
Even though they do the like one check thing, which is why they're touching his guitar in the first place.
Yeah,
but they're like, we've got to be so careful because if this goes right, it'll change the tide of the war.
The enemy seems to know our every move in preparation for Roundhammer. We don't know if it's surveillance or if there's a traitor amongst us. Therefore, our mission here, ultra compartmentalized, will alter that situation. Once it's executed, Operation Roundhammer is a go.
How much can you tell an old friend?
I can only tell you the details of the mission. Just 4 people in the world know the entire plan.
Is it time to talk about the thing that is probably the meat of the discussion that we want to sink our teeth into? Because, look, I'll give... I feel bad because I feel dismissive when I say this. I want to give a cursory kind of acknowledgement to, like, the 58th, the paranoid. They kind of talk smack to each other about things. That's like a little throwaway thing that happens. There's the Cooper stuff that we'll talk about. But can we talk about the Native American stuff? Can we?
Yeah.
Can we? Look, we're not experts. We aren't knowledgeable in this. It's one of those things where we are aware of the type of failed attempts that media has tried to do when it comes to incorporating Native American culture into their shows or movies. Because, I mean, we've seen stuff. We grew up with shows from the 90s like this, like Voyager, like X-Files, and so on.
And so many things that mention or do a whole thing with spirit animals.
It was a very, very prevalent thing, it feels like, in the 90s to have this almost...
the cultural obsession with, like... There are often phases where it's like...
Oh, let's not forget Twin Peaks.
Ooh, this is the culture that we're, like, deep diving into and exploring their mysticism.
Using their culture, which to the, most likely white writers, or at least non-Native American writers, see as the most tangibly magical culture. This happens with a lot of indigenous cultures. We talked about this when we did our discussion on the Babylon 5 episode Walkabout, which did the similar thing with Aboriginal culture down here in Australia. That we were a little bit more knowledgeable to discuss than Native Americans like issues, because this is one of those things where we open up the episode and it's like, oh, he's a Native American person played clearly by an actual Native American actor, and they're getting executed, and it's like, here's the image. And it feels, even before we get into the rest of the episode, you already get the sensation that this is an active choice rather than just they cast an actor who happened to be, this. It feels very clear from the beginning. And since we have seen so many fuck-ups when it comes to Native Americans in shows, it already set me off a bit, because I'm going, oh god, how, like, a major part of me was like, how are they going to fuck this up? Because they always fuck it up in these things. They always have some bullshit line or some kind of...
Well, it felt dodgy to me that, like, you're setting up that this episode in a part is about Native Americans, or specifically this Native American, right? And you are highlighting an individual that's on death row and about to be executed by lethal injection, and that's the experience that you're highlighting.
It's very charged. And they know it because they talk about it extensively with the general. Like,
and they highlight that, you know, he's the highest serving Native American
in the world. Like, it's they really put that in an underline.
And it's just like, okay, so you're clearly going, but here's a good example. Here's the two sides of the coin, because that's a large part of that conversation that they have over Jimmy's dead body. Is this is what I could have been, and this is what I am.
But I want to give the episode a little bit more credit than that, because there is a very layered conversation when it comes to the differences between the two men. Like, I don't think it's as simple and boiled down as that, but that is a part of the discussion, I understand. But, like, just to keep going back to the very beginning, you see this Native American man there strapped in, he's killed someone. Obviously, there's lots of, you know, parallels to the real world, and the show does this. This is what the show does. Like, the show plays around with, like, the show is one that deals with bigotry, the one that deals with prejudice, and the Earth that this takes place in isn't united. It is one where people still hate other people. It's not just, oh, now we're all united because we hate the Chigs. It's still nasty, and it's still kind of unsettling. And so it's not as if it's a strike against the episode because of that. What I strike it for more so when it comes to this is there's a level of almost pandering, or kind of, hey, white people at home, we got to catch you up a bit. You know this is Native American because we're playing the music all the time. Every time we talk about Native American issues, we got to play the drums and the pipes and all of that. And, like, did you need
and you know what?
to do that? We got this through the dialogue.
We're going to refer to the tribes that most people are aware of.
Well, again, it's important to the story because of history.
Yeah. Yeah. But, like, they refer to a couple of other tribes, and it's just like, oh yeah, I've heard them referred to. So it's just like making sure that the audience is aware of who they're talking about. And I find it interesting.
You know, I wonder too, and this can't be the case because of how the episode's constructed, but with all of this discussion about our character of James Darkmoon, I wish he was a character. Like, he exists solely as a thing. Something to talk about for some other
and it's
people.
His body.
And they try to do that thing that they've done in other episodes successfully, where it's like, in death, they have saved the day, and they will propel things
a number of times.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that you know.
You got it. And we've seen that be successfully used in previous installments, and it's mainly because we actually knew those people. This guy, we introduced him being killed, and then he's a platform for another character, the general, to basically give a little... we get to know him through the story.
Yeah, but we don't know him from before.
No.
We know him in this moment.
Well, yeah, but he uses James Darkmoon's story to tell us his story as a younger man, and parts of me love what we get here, and parts of me just doesn't think it feels authentic, because he is the rub, right? They tell us James Darkman's story, one that we often see repeated over and over again, whether in, through the news or through TV shows and movies of like the displaced young Native American man who's a drunk and does crimes because they have no like lease in life because of the oppression of the system of the white man. And it's like, okay, I've heard that a million times, and like I'm not saying there isn't any validity, but it's like, okay, that's his story. And then they use his story, that story, to as a highlight example of how this general is not that, and how he used to be that, and he could have still been that.
The military saved him.
The military life saved him and gave him a newfound purpose. One that we don't get to see represented as a story that Native Americans get in the modern day. And I say modern in terms of like when this was created, not in terms of this story set in the future, or us now talking about it. But like in 1995, how often did you see stories in which it's like one of the greatest heroes in the world is a Native American guy, and it's explicit, like that's important.
Yeah.
Like, I praise it for that. Like, I think that's a great, little thing of,
not to be diminished.
A great little thing of saying, hey, this is the kind of tried and true, like, you've heard this tale of Native Americans currently a lot, but have you seen this story, this type of man in your shows? Not really. Not really. Like, a part of why I liked him in terms of, like, representation and what the episode was grappling with culture was I don't see, Native American characters be propped up in this type of position with this much reverence and with this much, like, confidence and competence and nuances.
Yeah.
He was a nuanced character.
Yeah.
And so that's why I flinch with, like, the other part of it where it's like, but he is the one that you do know.
Yeah.
And that's kind of used as a thing in the script to show us how this guy's not like that now.
Yeah, they're trying to grapple with a very big thing. And for the most part, they do it with grace. But it does lead to a lot of questions for me about, like, the intent and the implications of the representation that is used. And I think, I was having a lot of those questions because just randomly I've watched a couple of videos recently that are Native people talking about their experiences either growing up knowing that they're Native or finding out, like, sort of later, and I guess becoming a little bit more familiar with the cultural genocide that was and sort of is still being committed against Native Americans.
Yeah. And that's something that you could easily explore with this character who is in part a part of a system that helps, perpetuate the American war machine and the cycle that it has on its own soil as well as outside. What worries me, and I want to know if this worried you too at all. Does this character exist and this story exist because the spawning point was we read about this Native American decoding thing in war and we thought we could tie it into the Chig stuff.
Yeah.
And to do that, we have to then maybe make a character who can help be the embodiment. And like, I worry very much so that this story, like all of this layered, nuanced stuff we talked about, didn't spawn from because the writers were like, I really want to explore in our future sci-fi show what Native American Marines would be like and how we could tie that into the stigma.
The legacies of those things in the future.
And how it ties back into the past with the US, like with the US and like in the, you know, in the army and the military and all of that.
Yeah.
I just have a gut feeling that it really was. Yeah. They went, I want my aliens to be gods for, I don't know, Native American people because their religions and their cultures are like kookier than Catholicism. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so then this spawns from that rather than this makes the other thing spawn.
Yes. Yeah. I assumed that it was that way round, especially because at least from appearances, they got a Native American actor to play Jimmy, but not somebody who is visually coded, at least to what we think of when we think of Native Americans. For the general.
I met him in jail when he stole something from my sister's home. I saw him in the same cell where I sat when I was young, for throwing rocks in the library windows. A recruiter came in and convinced me I was wasting my life, so I joined up. I wanted to pay back that man and give Jimmy the same break.
We have praised how they do explore bigotry, racial prejudice in this series through the tanks as characters. And that's sci-fi, allegory stuff. And we have also discussed how sometimes that can be repulsive when you have like your sci-fi thing being like, these aliens represent these people in real life and all of that. And just, or like this sci-fi concept. Yeah. Like, you know, it can be not a winner for a lot of people, including us, but we think it works in this show because they have enough of a separation for it to be its own thing, but we know what they're calling to. Now in this episode, we're directly attaching it and exploring real life, like this is a thing. And yet two of our main characters in the show are people of color. We have a black woman and an Asian man, and they've never touched it with those two characters.
Yes.
And I've been fine with that. Like, I go, okay, that's fine.
I sort of appreciate it in a way.
But now that we're doing it with this guy who's a throwaway character, like, he's getting all of this nuance and all of, like, this headiness and weight and drama, and it comes across as, like, a little bit of, like, a... you know, like an after-school special. Like, hey, we brought in the guests so we could explore this with them, and so we can rinse it away after this is done, rather than if we explored it with Wang. If we had a thing like this with Wang, you can't just wash that off after a singular episode like you can with this man. Like,
and it feels really weird because this is, like, this thing is so important to us in terms of the episode, but they probably did not think about it that much. One way or another, but because the landscape of media has changed so much and our perspective is specific, we bring a lot of things to the show because of the lenses that we have.
There is stuff to say about the way this series plays with the racial issues with Wang. And I'll put a pin in that until we finish the show, because there is some rather fascinating stuff behind the scenes wise to talk about that. But like, it is something to think about though, where two of our main characters in the show are actual people of color. And this is a series where the stories that you often see given to people of color are given to the two white guys. Yeah. And then in this episode, it's given to a guest star who is, you know, a native, and they're directly being like, this is about
and
the
then
Native
you have
Americans. And so it's like, okay.
The sci-fi racism of the in vitros.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like with McQueen and
but like you were saying, the racism stories being given to the in vitros instead allow that distancing of the reality which is sort of what they're doing here with the Native American storylines of distancing the reality of it, because it's just like, well, it's in this sci-fi thing, and you know, the awful experiences of the indigenous people of North America are even further removed from them in that situation. And so there's like layers of removal that the show does repeatedly when it comes to these sorts of issues.
Again, I really want to emphasize, I love Space Above and Beyond. I love what they're doing here. And when I say this, I don't mean this as a slanderous thing or something to really slap them on the hand about, but it does have that air of, if we fuck it up, it doesn't matter because we don't have to come back to it. But if they fuck up something like Wang or something like Denfu, shit,
it matters.
Shit, yeah,
they have
matters.
to deal with it. They
have to contend.
Circle back to the fact that, like, well, they can wash this character away and forget about it entirely, whether it was successful or not, because he's just here for the one episode.
And you know, I am thankful, like, they have been very tactful with Wang and Denfu and Ross, while, like, Chakotay in Voyager is, like, a constant embarrassment and, like, a real, like, no matter how much I like Voyager, I can never defend it because of just Chakotay's existence as a character, or, like, you know, Hoshi in Enterprise, or stuff like that, like, yikes. But yeah, I just really wanted to go over this because really this is the most fascinating thing about the story, because we're pushing all of the important plot arcs forward, but what the writers are clearly interested in is this, and a part of this is they want us to have these discussions, whether it is as much as looking at their choices as writers or just the societal and systemic issues. And no matter what, I at least will commend something like Space Above and Beyond for the ambitious
trying
at this, than rather than putting their fingers in their ears and avoiding it altogether and pretending like it's all clean and squeaky without actually noticing like the stuff that's clearly there.
They really do acknowledge and explore the reality that is different communities involved in conflicts have different experiences.
You can't have your gritty sci-fi war show and ignore stuff like this, or else it's inauthentic and it's hollow.
It wouldn't be staying true to what we feel like the aims of the show are.
And not just the aims of the show, but just when you put all of those things together, like, here is a science fiction war show that is serious and gritty. You're like, well, war isn't just this thing that happens because, we just want land. Like, there's all of these things that are part of war. A part of it is hatred. A part of it is bigotry. And where does that come from? Like, and as a show, you explore that. You grab it by the horns and you go on that ride and you actually delve into it. And Space Above and Beyond has constantly been doing that. Sometimes it stumbles, but hey, those stumbles still make for interesting conversations nonetheless, rather than if they just avoided them.
This episode is a yum from me.
I said earlier that there was stuff I liked about it, and you know, I kind of talked about it a bit, but overall, it's like, it's a yum from me. The Hawks conversation was amazing, though. I loved the conversation between him and that the tech lady. I loved their back and forth.
I loved that she wasn't there when he got back.
And I loved her retort of like, why do you have to admire someone and respect them if they've killed a person? Like, why is that somehow like the rules here? Like, yeah, I haven't been in a dogfight. Yeah, I haven't taken somebody's life. Doesn't mean I don't know anything. And I really was thankful that the series came through with that message as well, because it has veered into that territory of rah, we like, you know, it's about these people who have gotten into dogfights and know how to use a gun and can kill a person just like that we take the word of God from and just rely on. And sometimes like you have those civilian characters like Sewell who are just slimy and or pathetic or silly or goofish, while this woman, clear cut, she was smart, she knew her job, she was competent. I'd like to see more of her. I don't know if we do, but she was great. And I love the points she brought up. But that is it for this.
I just kept on thinking throughout this episode, this is the third last episode?
Yeah.
This is what we're doing with 3 episodes left.
Now, do you want to hear what the next episode is called?
Yes, I do.
Sugar Dirt is episode 21. Sugar Dirt. 2 words. Thoughts on what that could mean?
Well, it's so obvious that I don't even need to say it.
Okay, so that's Rachel knows. Rachel knows. So obvious, she doesn't need to say it. But do you guys know? Do you have a guess? If so, you can email us over at yumyumpod@gmail.com, or you can follow us over at any of the social medias under YumYumPod or YumYumPodcast. We include this all in the description below. You can support us on Patreon, where you can hear our thoughts on so many different TV shows and movies and books and podcasts and games, as well as be a part of our patron group where you get to talk to other patrons on our Discord and have a grand old time. You can hear our thoughts on the rest of Space Above and Beyond over on Patreon right now, because we release this first for the patrons and then to you on the main feed. So you can skip ahead right now for a little bit of money. You can skip ahead to hear our thoughts on the end of the series and the end of this, and hear Rachel scream with joy, like pump her fists up going, yeah, this is how you cancel a show, Fox. But that is all we have for you. Let us know what you think about Stardust. Are we being too negative on it? Are we not giving it enough love and affection and attention? Or do you think it's stinky poo-poos, or do you think it's just okay? In the end, when it's a yum, it's an okay yum for me. Like, this is like,
yeah,
it's okay. But this episode could have used one thing. Pags.
Here's the Pags.